What if I told you that what you call love is nothing more than a fever of the flesh, a deception conjured by nature so that you may march blindly into chains? What if every whispered confession, every trembling hand reaching for another, is merely the will's cruel trick to perpetuate itself through you using your body as its stage, your longing as its rope? You believe love is freedom. It is not. It is the most exquisite form of captivity. The heart speaks in sighs. Yet, behind its song, there is only biology, grinding, relentless, indifferent. You look into the eyes of another and imagine eternity, but what stares back is not eternity, only the abyss wearing a mask, the abyss beckoning you to sacrifice your peace for the mirage of union. Love does not heal, it unsettles. It does not liberate, it binds. And yet, you run toward it, begging for the chains, mistaking their cold weight for warmth. Consider the lover pacing at night, restless, unable to sleep. The mind replays every word, every silence, every absence. A missed call becomes a dagger, a delayed reply an earthquake. This is not joy, it is torment with a perfume, pain disguised as meaning. One could almost laugh at the cruelty if the laughter itself were not drowned by the tears of expectation unmet. Love, then, is not only desire. Desire burns quickly, like fire-consuming paper. Love lingers, it festers, it seeps into the marrow, not satisfied with a single touch, but demanding repetition, possession, permanence. It is the will's most intricate snare, not merely the thirst for flesh, but the hunger to conquer another's freedom, to absorb another's life into your own. And yet, the paradox, we chase it, we glorify it. We write songs to its cruelty, novels to its despair, films to its destruction. Humanity worships its tormentor, bows before the altar of its own undoing. To be unloved is agony. To be loved is another form of agony. You may escape solitude only to enter bondage. You may flee bondage only to meet solitude again. You feel this, don't you? That silent tremor, the recognition that beneath the sweetness of affection lies a pulse of suffering. It is why the happiest moments with a lover often carry the faint taste of dread, because somewhere, hidden, you already know, it will end, either in betrayal, in indifference, or in death. Love is not only desire. It is the wound we cherish, the dream we refuse to wake from, the lie we willingly repeat, because the truth, the cold, unbearable truth, is that without it, life would feel too empty to endure. You believe love elevates you, makes you more than yourself. But look closely. It is not an ascent, it is a fall. A plunge into the abyss of dependency, where your joy hangs by the trembling thread of another's mood, another's fleeting attention. When they smile, the world seems bearable. When they turn away, the world collapses. Tell me, is this greatness, or is it enslavement disguised as ecstasy? A friend once confessed, "When she left, I did not lose her, I lost myself." That sentence is the quiet epitaph of every passion. We imagine we own another heart, yet in truth, it is our own heart that has been seized, our will enslaved, our peace confiscated. What we call heartbreak is not the absence of another, it is the revelation of our own dependence. The poets speak of love as fire, but fire consumes, it devours until only ashes remain, and those ashes you clutch as though they were gold. You replay old messages, keep their belongings, linger over the scent left on a pillow. This is not devotion, it is haunting. The beloved becomes a ghost that stalks you even in their absence. And still, we beg for it. We throw ourselves into its furnace again and again, like moths striking the same flame, knowing each time that wings will burn, yet unable to resist the light. Why? Because the will inside you, that blind, ceaseless striving, demands continuation. It whispers that you are incomplete without the other, when in fact you are only incomplete because you believed it. This is the paradox. In fleeing pain, you fall into greater pain. You seek love to escape loneliness, but in doing so, you discover the deeper loneliness, the loneliness of depending on someone else to make existence bearable. You think the cure is union, but union brings its own disease. Jealousy, fear, possessiveness, the endless terror of loss. The will offers you relief with one hand and strangles you with the other. Aphorism. To love is to hand your enemy the weapon with which to wound you, and to smile as you do so. And yet, in these very ruins, in this cruelty, something astonishing flickers. For in recognizing the illusion, you glimpse the truth. Love is not only desire, It is the mirror held up to the will, forcing you to confront the abyss of your own need. It is both the poison and the revelation. Imagine two lovers at the beginning. They walk through the city at dusk, hand in hand, believing the lights above them shine brighter because of their presence together. Every word exchanged feels eternal, as if language itself had been invented for this dialogue alone. Yet what moves beneath the surface? It is not eternity. It is instinct, the will's unthinking urgency, a blind force that needs no poetry, yet adorns itself in poetry so that you might accept its command. They believe they have found meaning. In truth, they are instruments, two violins strung and played by an invisible musician, vibrating with a song that does not belong to them. The tragedy is not that this moment is fleeting. The tragedy is that they believe it is permanent. They carve promises into the air, pledging forever. Yet forever is only the trembling hope of the moment. When desire softens, when repetition dulls the fire, what is left is not forever, but the ash of expectation. Every always collapses into the sobering once was. The lover you hold today becomes the stranger you avoid tomorrow. And you ask yourself how such closeness dissolved into distance, forgetting that distance was always there, masked only by the fever of need. Consider the ordinary stories. A man sits at a dinner table, staring at his partner across from him. 10 years have passed since their first meeting. He remembers the intoxication of her laughter, the unbearable urgency of waiting for her reply. Now silence fills the space between them like smoke. She speaks of errands, of weather, of trivialities. He nods, but his soul remembers the storm that once raged. What remains now is not love but habit, not ecstasy but endurance. This is not unique to him. It is the universal destiny of passion. The fire must become ash. The symphony must end in silence. And yet, still, countless hearts dive headlong into the same abyss. A woman checks her phone at midnight, waiting for a message from someone who no longer thinks of her. She convinces herself he is busy, that tomorrow will bring the reply. Tomorrow comes, and silence remains. The silence spreads like frost over her skin, each hour colder than the last. This silence is not accidental. It is the essence of love itself, the disproportion between what we give and what we receive, the abyss between expectation and reality. We imagine union, but what we find is always separation, only briefly interrupted by fleeting moments of contact. Aphorism. Every declaration of love contains its own obituary, waiting to be read in time. If love were only desire, it would be cruel but brief. Desire flares, then fades. But love is not only desire. It festers, it claims permanence. It demands not only a body, but a soul, not only presence, but eternity. And eternity is precisely what the world cannot give. Therefore, every love carries the seed of torment, because it asks for what existence cannot provide. We decorate this torment with symbols, rings, ceremonies, anniversaries. All are desperate attempts to bind the wind, to capture in ritual what is by nature impermanent. We tell ourselves that vows will preserve passion, that law will sustain intimacy. But the truth is that no promise, no ritual, no decree has power over the will. The will moves as it pleases, casting aside one attachment for another, mocking your efforts to cage it. Marriage does not sanctify love. It buries it under habit, until the living flame becomes an ember one barely remembers. Look at the jealousy that consumes lovers, the suspicion, the restless checking, the gnawing fear that the beloved's gaze might fall upon another. What is this if not proof of slavery? The free man fears nothing, but the lover is never free. He imagines his joy depends on fidelity, yet in truth, his torment springs from dependence itself. He has surrendered his sovereignty and now clings desperately to the chains he once mistook for gifts. And even in fidelity, suffering persists. Two lovers may remain faithful for life, but fidelity does not spare them the inevitable. One must watch the other decay, weaken, and die. Love promises eternity, yet time answers with the grave. To hold another as mine forever is to forget that nothing on earth is forever, least of all the fragile vessel of flesh that carries the soul. Death, indifferent and patient, always interrupts the dream. But perhaps the deepest cruelty lies not in betrayal or in death, but in the realization that love itself is never about the other. The lover does not truly seek the beloved's happiness. He seeks his own completion through her. Love, no matter how exalted, is selfish at its root. The beloved is not loved for herself, but for the intoxication she provokes. Remove the intoxication, and the lover sees nothing sacred left. This is why the same person who once declared you the purpose of his life may later discard you with indifference. His worship was never for you. It was for the effect you produced in him. Aphorism. The beloved is not the treasure. She is only the mirror in which the lover mistakes his own hunger for beauty. And so we arrive at the paradox. Love feels like transcendence, yet it chains us to the lowest instinct. It feels like eternity, yet it collapses under time. It feels like union, yet it deepens separation. The sweetness of the kiss conceals the bitterness of the dependency it breeds. To chase it is to flee pain, yet the chase itself is the deeper pain. I once saw an old man sitting alone on a park bench, watching couples walk past him. His face was expressionless, but in his stillness there was knowledge. He had known love in his youth. He had carried its burdens, he had suffered its betrayals, and savored its moments of delirium. Now, in his silence, there was neither longing nor bitterness, only resignation. He had seen through the masquerade. He no longer sought another's gaze to affirm his existence. In his loneliness, he was more whole than the couples who passed by, clinging to one another out of fear of emptiness. This is the uncomfortable truth. Love does not liberate us from loneliness. It merely distracts us from it for a time, then delivers us back into it with interest. To love is to gamble against despair, but the house always wins. Some lose early, some lose late, but all who play are defeated. And yet, one cannot simply refuse love. To deny it is to feel the emptiness of existence too nakedly. To embrace it is to suffer its illusions. There is no path untouched by sorrow. The choice is not between suffering and joy, but between one form of suffering and another. Aphorism. He who avoids love suffers from loneliness. He who embraces love suffers from bondage. Choose as you will, the will laughs at both. And so the question lingers. If love is not only desire, what is it? It is the mirror of existence itself, striving, restless, insatiable, deceptive, cruel. To study love is to study the will in miniature, condensed into the fever of two bodies and the torment of two souls. And like existence itself, it promises meaning yet delivers only repetition, struggle, and loss. You imagine yourself free when you fall in love, as though you were making a choice. But no one chooses whom they love. You are seized, compelled, overtaken by a force that cares nothing for your reason, your plans, your peace. This force is not your soul, but something older, more ruthless, blind, and mechanical. The will to life. It pulls you toward another, not for your happiness, but for the continuation of the species. The poetry you speak is merely camouflage, the illusion draped over a biological imperative. You kneel at the altar of romance, but in truth, you are bowing to the will's demand that life repeat itself through you. A man sees a woman across a crowded room. His heart surges. His mind invents stories of destiny. His body trembles. He believes he has found the one. But why her and not another? Why this face, this form, this voice? Because somewhere in his blood, in his silent instinct, he recognizes the features that will combine with his to create another generation. What he calls love at first sight is merely the unconscious recognition of reproductive advantage. Nature cares not for his joy, only for his usefulness as a vessel. And yet he believes it is freedom, transcendence, fate. This is the grand trick. The will does not reveal its real purpose, for if it did, you would resist. Instead, it intoxicates you with longing, blinds you with idealization, whispers into your ear that eternity is possible. You suffer willingly, you sacrifice gladly, because you mistake the will's chains for the embrace of the beloved. Aphorism. Love is the will wearing a mask, and the mask is always beautiful enough to deceive its victim. Look closer at obsession. The sleepless nights, the inability to think of anything else, the jealousy that gnaws, the despair when abandoned. These are not signs of spiritual depth. They are symptoms of possession, the will taking full command of its host. What we call romantic passion is a fever that makes slaves of the mind. And when at last the fever breaks, you look back and ask, what madness was this? How could I have surrendered so completely? But the madness was never yours. It belonged to the will, which used you and discarded you once its purpose was served. This is why the history of love is also the history of betrayal, abandonment, and disillusion. The will drives two souls together with unbearable force, then abandons them to boredom whence its hidden aim is complete. Lovers who once swore eternity awaken beside one another with indifference, wondering how the flame could die. But the flame was never meant to last. It burned only as long as the will required it. Consider the tragedies born of this. Duels fought over unfaithful lovers, suicides committed in despair, lives wasted in pursuit of an affection withheld. All this blood spilled, all this agony endured for what? For the blind continuation of a process that does not know your name, that does not care whether you live or die. The will consumes your heart as fuel, and when the fuel is spent, it moves on without pity. And yet, knowing this, you cannot escape it. Even the philosopher, armed with clarity, feels the stirrings of desire, the intoxication of beauty, the ache of loneliness. Knowledge cannot dissolve the will's command. It can only strip away the illusion, leaving you with the bitter awareness of your servitude. To live is to obey the will. To love is to obey it doubly, with chains that feel like caresses. Aphorism. The lover believes he is chasing joy, but it is the will that is chasing him, and he runs straight into its net. Sometimes, in rare moments of lucidity, you glimpse the truth. The beloved's face, once worshipped, suddenly appears ordinary. The spell lifts, and you realize that what seemed divine was merely human. This moment of clarity is terrifying, for it reveals that your entire devotion was built upon an illusion. You did not love her for who she was, but for what the will made you see in her. And now, with the illusion gone, you are left with emptiness. The abyss is revealed again, darker than before, because you now know how easily you can be deceived. But here lies the strange gift of suffering. Through love's cruelty, we are forced to confront the essence of life itself. Love is not only desire, it is the concentrated form of existence, restless striving, endless illusion, the promise of happiness followed by the certainty of loss. To study love is to hold a mirror to the world. It reveals everything: the insatiability of desire, the futility of possession, the inevitability of death. And so the lover, broken and abandoned, is closer to truth than the one still intoxicated. For in despair, he sees reality unmasked. He sees that love was never freedom, never salvation, but the most exquisite form of servitude. You have seen it, perhaps the man who cannot let go. His lover has left, yet he continues to circle her presence like a moth circling an extinguished flame. He checks her absence as if it were presence, stalks her shadow as if it were light. The pain is unbearable, yet he clings to it. Why? Because even agony feels preferable to the abyss of nothingness. To suffer for love is at least to feel alive. To be without love is to face the hollowness of existence with no distraction. This is the paradox that tightens like a noose. In fleeing pain, he binds himself to deeper pain. He believes his suffering is noble, proof of the depth of his devotion, but in truth it is only proof of his slavery. He worships the very chains that strangle him. He does not realize that the beloved has become less important than the suffering itself. The agony is no longer about her. It is about him, about his refusal to let go of the illusion that his life can be filled from outside. Aphorism. The greatest tyrant is not the beloved, but the illusion of fulfillment she represents. Jealousy intensifies this torment. Think of the lover who imagines his beloved in the arms of another. He cannot sleep, cannot breathe, cannot bear the thought of being replaced. Yet beneath this jealousy lies an even darker truth. He does not rage because she loves another, but because his illusion is no longer singular. He believed he possessed eternity in her. Another man's presence reveals the lie that she was never his, that nothing can ever be possessed. The will cloaked this truth with passion, but jealousy tears away the veil, leaving him naked before reality. A woman, abandoned by her partner, writes letters she never sends. In them, she pleads, curses, bargains. She tells herself that if he would just return, everything would be as before. But this is another deception. For even if he returned, the fracture would remain. The innocence of passion cannot be restored once it has been broken. The wound of betrayal does not heal. It festers beneath every gesture, every word. To love again as before is impossible, for the illusion once shattered never regains its shine. And still, people cling. They cling because the alternative is unbearable. Without the illusion of love, existence appears in its raw form. Endless time, empty repetition, the self staring at itself with no veil between. This is the silence people fear most, not solitude itself, but the solitude of seeing life unadorned. Love, even in its cruelty, is a mask that spares us from this vision. When the mask falls, the abyss stands revealed. Aphorism: the heart prefers slavery with illusion to freedom with truth, but despair, if endured, can sharpen. In the very moment when the pain feels most unendurable, a strange clarity arrives. The lover sees, perhaps for the first time, that his torment is not unique but universal. Countless before him have suffered the same fever, and countless will suffer after him. His suffering is not his alone. It is the form of suffering itself, the mark of being alive. This recognition, though bleak, carries a kind of release. For what is universal loses its sting of personal injustice. The breakthrough comes not in comfort, but in cold acceptance. To love is to be deceived, to suffer, to lose. This cannot be avoided. But to see it as illusion, to recognize it as the will's game, is to step outside the fever for a moment and watch it burn without being entirely consumed. One cannot kill the will, but one can unmask it. And in that unmasking lies a fragment of freedom, not freedom from pain, but freedom from illusion. And so, the arc completes itself. Love begins as ecstasy, descends into dependency, flowers into jealousy, collapses into despair, and finally dissolves into clarity. What remains is not joy, but lucidity. The beloved is gone, the illusion shattered, but in the ashes there is knowledge. The knowledge that love was never salvation, only another mask the will wore to keep you enslaved. Aphorism: love promises eternity, but its true gift is disillusion, and disillusion is the beginning of truth. You who have listened this far, you feel it. The unease is not entertainment, not theory, but recognition. Something in you knows that what has been said is not exaggeration, but exposure. For love, which you once crowned as the highest joy, has been revealed as the will's most elaborate snare, the mask that conceals dependence, jealousy, despair. What you took as salvation is revealed as captivity, and now the question is no longer whether love deceives it does. The question is whether you dare to see it as it is, or whether you will continue to serve the illusion. Most will return to sleep, wrapping themselves again in the dream of soulmates, of forever, of completion. They will cling to their chains and call them freedom, because freedom without illusion feels too vast, too silent, too unbearable. But some, perhaps you will not turn away. Some will endure the nausea of seeing clearly, the vertigo of standing before existence with no narcotic, no fantasy, no veil. And though this clarity does not comfort, it strengthens, for the one who sees truth cannot be deceived again in the same way. He may still feel desire, still suffer longing, but he will know what it is, not eternity, not transcendence, but the will repeating its cruelty through him. To know is not to escape, but it is to stand awake while others dream. Aphorism: he who suffers illusions suffers twice. He who suffers truth suffers only once. Do not mistake this for cynicism. It is not hatred of love, but exposure of it. To strip love of its illusions is not to destroy it, but to see it in its naked form, a fever, a wound, a chain. In seeing, you are no longer its slave in blindness. You may still burn, but you will not worship the flame. This is the demand. Confront your illusions, endure your discomfort, abandon the consolations that keep you asleep. Do not seek the narcotic of false promises. Do not hide in the arms of fantasies that cannot last. Let the chains show themselves as chains. Let love reveal itself as suffering, and let this suffering reveal to you the essence of life itself, the ceaseless will, the endless repetition, the futility beneath the mask. Only then, when you no longer flee from the abyss, when you no longer beg for sweet lies, do you stand in the cold air of authenticity. It is not joy, it is not comfort, it is strength, born of lucidity. Aphorism: to awaken is not to be happy, but to be free from deception. And so the journey ends not with consolation, but with exposure. The beloved fades, the illusion dissolves, the will continues its blind march. But you remain, standing in the ruins with open eyes. That is all that can be asked of you. That is everything.